So I've been thinking a lot about language and the fact that language is an artifact. It's a materially constructed object in the world that in and of itself has no life or meaning. It takes a sentient organism such as myself, such as anybody listening, or uh, it takes that self to interpret the language, to give it meaning. And then at this level of the self, we think of language as if I write these thoughts down on a piece of paper and then I read them back, and I think that's a private communication that I have with myself. And in a sense, the sensory input that I get from the words on the page right in front of me is a private transaction. But that's only my sensation of the artifact. It's what my physical body and brain tell me about what these words mean. But what the words mean is not a localizable phenomenon. It has nothing to do with what's in my brain. What the words mean has to do with how I communicate with others. It has to do with this mental realm of intersubjectivity. And so if we want to break this down, it's three basic categories. There's the I world, which is what I experience as an individual body, the physical world that I inhabit, the biological body that I inhabit. My perspective from the inside out is the I world. And then there's the it world, which is what the I is aware of. And we could think of this in terms of the object being the spectacle and the subject being this spectator. So the I is the spectator, the it is the spectacle. And I was reading Debord's The Society of the Spectacle, um, that Alex just told me to look up in his response, and I've really continued reading about. I've only read not even a page's worth of it, but I'm almost blown away because it seems so significant. I'm just going to read. I'm going to quote one more paragraph here. The images detached from every aspect of life fuse in a common stream in which the unity of this life can no longer be reestablished. And again, these images are its. They're artifacts that exist in the world as representations, because this model of what a human mind is, that's really the epistemological foundation for our public way of interacting with one another as spectators and with reacting to a spectacle, passive spectators. That the epistemological framework that grounds this is mental representation, which goes back, we can go back to Plato, but in Plato, my idea and the world itself are not separate. The idea is this structure that runs through all of the cosmos, and then we progress to Augustine, who starts to say, he starts to invent the cogito, essentially, by saying the only thing I can't doubt is myself. And when I get back to that level of self-consciousness, that was his proof of God, really. He had some theological proofs as well, some ontological proofs, but he had a phenomenological proof of God's existence too, in the sense that once you doubt everything but yourself, your self-consciousness, you then have to recognize the next step, which is you can only exist because of God. And he has a very mystical understanding of what God means. We can't think of it as some bearded father up on a cloud in heaven or something. But so I think what a rational discourse would be on YouTube, on the blogosphere, on just the internet in general, giving rise to this global culture, because the internet is the artifact, the computers and the networks and the phone lines. These are the artifacts that are allowing this global consciousness to arise. But again, it takes us as participants manipulating the symbols, creating the symbols as artists, for them to have any meaning. So that's really what I think intersubjectivity is. It's a loss. You when you intersubject, when you become part of the we, the community, you lose your sense of I, and you lose the sense of itness. So the spectator and the spectacle just dissolve away, or they merge together, or they recognize their relationship, and that they recognize that they are defined by their relationship. Or at least it's we who are conscious. We sentient beings who are aware of the artifacts that we use to communicate are what give the artifacts the meaning. So the I world eats up the it world and thereby disposes of itself, because without the object there is no subject to perceive it. There is only we together. And so real intersubjectivity is the loss of the subject, the dissolution of the ego. And this doesn't necessarily imply that the global community is going to be a communist groupthink. We all agree on some idea, like in the case of communism, that material production is what's really important to us as a society, and we have to make sure that wealth is evenly distributed, and that the means of production are not owned by a small percentage of the population that basically places the rest of the masses in the situation of serfs, indentured servants almost. But this isn't. I'm not suggesting that we become communist. I'm just saying that it's a retribalization, and what allows us to separate while still remaining globally connected is, I think, what it requires will be, and what it is requiring already, is this new intersubjective sense of spirituality. Whereas, in the past, your religion, your transcendental or your supernatural, metaphysical, existential outlook to life was something that was subjective, that you kept to yourself, and you couldn't really engage anybody else with it, because it's all your opinion and your imagination, and it has nothing to do with the real world, the spectacle, the objective itness. So traditionally people have kept all these feelings of interconnectedness, which I think is the root of spirituality, silent. But this new, I'm going to call it spirituality, but that's a scary word, but don't be afraid of it. I'm just saying that in the sense that this new spirituality that would arise would be, it's just based on the essence of what it is to be human. So human experience is the basis of this spirituality. What it means before any culture separates you to be human. And this may very well mean that we need a common planetary language. But I almost think we don't need new artifacts, a new language. We just need a new emotional outlook towards one another, because the meaning of our words comes from the emotional phase space that opens up within the embodiment of each sentient being. And if we can get to the root of that, the experience of embodiment, of being itself, of human being, then we can communicate again, because we have that common collective unconscious together, that experience at the base level of our awareness that's the same. And I'm hoping that that's what YouTube develops into, or the internet in general develops into.